Let's address the elephant in the room. I'm wearing the same hoodie that I wore in the last video. I wear the same clothes all the time. I've got a blanket on. I'm just feeling, I want to feel cozy. I want to feel just like snug. My face looks atrocious today. I mean, my face always looks atrocious, but I just feel like my spots look otherworldly today. So just ignore that. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome back to whatever the f this is. Today, I'm doing my January and February reading wrap up. I know we're literally in the middle of March right now, but I didn't film a January one and I never filmed a February one. And instead of doing two separate ones, I just put them all together because I didn't read an exceptional amount of books in those 2 months. But yeah, I'm back. I'm back from the dead. My last video I talked about 105 books, so it really just took a lot out of me. I needed to have a break. So on that break, I read some books and I'm going to tell you which ones I read. First book of the year, the first book of 2023 that I read was Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. This is a dark romance. It's also student teacher. We're following this girl called Ivory who goes to a private music school for piano. Even though she comes from a very tough home life, a very like a rough household. She's got like an abusive brother, a no-show mother, but she can afford to go to this school because her now dead dad, sounds a bit morbid, but you know, her now dead dad paid for her to go to this private school because they both love piano. So she's going there, she's playing piano, and she's now got a new piano teacher who has just moved to this school, and his name is Emery. Literally straight from their first lesson, there's already like this tension between them. It's got like some like dominant energy from Emery. I don't know really if there's an age gap. Like obviously she's 17 and he's in his 20s. It's a bit questionable. And also another thing that I found questionable was the fact that you like read and find out in the book. This may be a spoiler, but like is it kind of a spoiler? Emmerich has like had an inappropriate relationship with a student at one of his past schools. That's where it kind of just like leaves me a bit iffy. I love this book, do not get me wrong. It's fiction, we'll look past it. Wayne, the heroine, is under 18, so in this book Ivory's 17. If the hero has already like done this before with another underage girl, it just gives really weird vibes. When it's an age gap and the heroine is 18, I can look past it because she's technically an adult, but I look past it because it is fiction and I am devouring a fictional story, and I know the difference between fiction and reality, and I know that just because I read something doesn't mean that I accept it to be correct. So I put my two halves aside and I decided that this was a really good book and I really enjoyed it. Obviously check up trigger warnings, dark is literally in the title. So after that I read Darling Venom by Parker S. Huntington. I can never describe this book in a really brief summary. I just can't do it. I'm gonna try to. We're following this girl called Charlotte. One day in high school, I think on Valentine's Day, which is also her birthday, she decides that she's going to take her own life off the roof of her school. When she gets to the roof of her school, she sees that there's another boy on this roof who is about to do the same thing. They basically like have a conversation, talk it out, and they make an agreement to meet each other every year on Valentine's Day on this roof to just like check in with each other. So they do that for a couple of years until I think their senior year, where this boy who's called Kellen doesn't make it to the roof. For the beginnings part of the book, you see what they talk about every year, and quite a recurring topic is the boy who's called Kellen, his brother who is called Tate. Tate is kind of just a reason why Kellen feels like uncomfortable in his home and stuff like that. I don't know, had to describe, you need to read the book to get the vibes. There is a time jump. The lady that Charlotte works for, she needs to book an appointment with her OBGYN. This OBGYN that we end up needing to book an appointment with happens to be Tate, who is Kellen's brother. Now, Tate has no idea who Charlotte is, but Charlotte knows who Tate is because obviously Charlotte knows of Tate through Kellen. But now that Kellen isn't here, there's like a little bit of tension. Long story short, a romance forms between Charlotte and Tate, but it's so much more than a romance. This book is really good. It is quite long. It's longer than I feel like it needs to be. There are some books where it's just long for the sake of being long, and I'm like, please put the pen down. But this one, I get it. And I did like it again. It was a good one. Afterwards, I read probably my favourite book of the year so far. Saying strong words, it's only March 17th right now, but my favourite book of the year so far is Iced Out by C.U. Ritchie. Is it Ritchie, Rissy, or Ricky? I'm going to say Ritchie, but I really don't know. This book, new adult college, ice hockey, enemies with benefits, romance. So good. If you love this book, you love Egotistical Footboy, because the vibes were just so similar. I loved it. I had so much fun reading this book. I also had no idea what this book was about going into it. I just saw the title and cover and was like, yeah, I'm gonna pick it up. Just thinking about this book makes me so happy because it really was so good. So in this book, we're following Quinton and Oakley. They are like ice hockey rivals. They play, I think they've been rivals for a while, but they play on the same team in college because they go to the same university, right? At the beginning of the book, Quinton is the team captain. Near the beginning, he gets that title revoked and Oakley gets it appointed. So there's even more tension between them. They're also having quite a loose losing streak this season in the hockey games. It's not looking good for some drafting to go on. There is a party before one of their like big important games, and at this party these two just decide to have a little bit of a benefits moment, and the next day we have an ice hockey game, and it is the first game of the season that we win. Now, ice hockey players, if you don't know, according to the law of this book, are very superstitious, and so Quentin and Oakley make the agreement that the reason why they won that game was because the night before they slept together, and so every night before a big game they're going to sleep together in the hopes that they're going to win. And so that's kind of what this book follows. It follows them sleeping together. We know how like this goes when they're enemies with benefits. So much fun. It's fast paced. It's a really short book. Is it better than Egotistical? No, but not a lot can really top that, okay? Next book that I read, Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did by Monica Murphy. I actually have a paperback here. Wow, look at me go. I absolutely adore this cover. I also really like the black version. I honestly don't know how to describe what this book's about. It's a new adult high school bully romance for the most part. It takes place at a private boarding school. Whit Lancaster, who's the hero of this book, his dad is like mega rich and owns this private school that both of these two go to. In like the prologue or chapter 1, I don't know, it's probably called chapter 1, but I'm gonna say prologue, Whit and Summer end up meeting each other as children, like 12-year-olds. It's kind of like an important scene that leads to why in the present day, if we count the prologue as the past, why there's a little bit of like, not beef, but like tension between them. Summer ends up actually transferring to this private school as a new student, and Whit makes it very hard for her to settle in. As what normally happens in bully romances, you know, he gets everyone to ice her out. Whit goes to Summer and says, you know, I'll stop all this shit if you... Basically, if she gives him some benefits, you know what I'm saying. It's very much like a no plot, just smut kind of book, which I'm fine with, but when it's this long, it's a little bit ridiculous. It's not even that it has no plot, it's that in my opinion, it has no character development either, so the book is very stagnant in terms of characters. So I gave this book 3 stars. We're still in January, by the way. The next book I read was Shameless Puck Boy by Eden Finley Saxon James, book 3 in the Puck Boy series. There's only 3 books out right now. Each book hasn't gotten less than 4 stars. They're just really good. So Shameless Puck Boy. This is a romance between an ice hockey player and a PR manager. So the ice hockey player is called Oscar. He's like an exhibitionist, is that what the term is? And when you're a professional ice hockey player in the public eye, that kind of makes you a PR nightmare. So in the law of this universe, most ice hockey teams have like a couple PR managers that manage the entire team. Oscar has one PR manager specifically for Oscar himself. He ends up getting caught doing stuff on CCTV, which then leads for his personal PR manager to be fired and replaced by a new one who is called Lane, and he's the other love interest in this book. Lane is very much, he wants to do his job correctly, you know, he's going to make sure that Oscar stays in line and doesn't act a fool in front of everyone. He has to live with Oscar, and whenever they go to away games they have to stay in the same hotel room, so there's a lot of forced proximity in this. We love a good forced proximity moment, and obviously during all this the lines get blurred, feelings start to be caught, fast paced, low angst, a lot of fun. From this point onwards we're kind of jumping into our February reads now. I technically read this book in January, but it's a series. I think that I like in the middle of this week go into February. I binge read this entire series one after another after another. I have them all in paperback, but I'm just going to hold up the first one, and that is the Crossfire series by Sylvia Day. I know what you're thinking, why the fuck did you read this? I don't know either. I just wanted to, right? I read 50 Shades last year, and like it was bad, but it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be, and so I was like very intrigued by the Crossfire series. The issue with Crossfire is that it's 5 books. They were all pretty terrible, I'm not gonna lie. Not a single book got higher than 2 stars. These books were bad. I'm glad to say that I've read them. Ava has recently moved to New York with her roommate, and she has an office job in this building. This building is called the Crossfire. This series is called the Crossfire series. The building is called the Crossfire because the guy who owns it is called Gideon Cross. He is a businessman, a billionaire. They end up literally bumping into each other on her first day of work, because when else are we going to bump into each other? You know what I mean? And when I say bump, remember this is a cringy romance novel. I mean we literally fall over. It's literally like kind of love at first sight, but it's not. No, I was going to say it's not horribly insta love, but it kind of is. I do believe in the love that they have for each other. I think books like this, where like they're so possessive of each other and it's not like a mafia romance, I just find it cringe. I think the characters are very immature. I think book 2 was my favourite. I liked that one a lot. It was 2 stars, but like compared to like the rest of the books, I think book 2 was my favourite. So I read all 5 of those books, and then I finally finished Daisy Hates the Great Undoing by Jessa Hastings. This is the most recent release in the Magnolia Parks universe. It literally came out in December, and I started reading it on release date, believe it or not, because I literally pre-ordered this. I started it in December and didn't finish until February because the first half, it just dragged for me. I don't know how to describe it, and I don't think anyone else will relate because from the reviews that I've seen online, people really like this book. The first half was so boring, but the second half was incredible. I was really conflicted about my overarching opinions on this book because the first half was just so hard for me to get into, but when I got into it, I was stuck. The reason why I didn't really explain the plot of this book is because I think you just need to read this series. You know, this is book 4. I don't want to spoil things. Overall, I think this series is quite excellent. I just prefer Magnolia and BJ. And so the final book in February that I read, and therefore the final book that I'm talking about in this video, is Sweet Dandelion by Macaulay Smeltzer. This book is huge. At the beginning of this book, or I guess before this book takes place, she was a victim of a school shooting. Right from the beginning of this book and throughout, she's like trying to come to terms and process what happened. She lost her mother in this school shooting. She's moved in with her brother. She's going to a new school, and she's got a brand new guidance counsellor at school. Danny was held back a year, so technically in this book she's 18 from the start, but again, it's fiction. Let's look past it. I really enjoyed this book, surprisingly. I love this cover as well. I think this cover's absolutely glorious. This book is very long. I'd prefer if it took a lot longer. Like, I'm talking Mariana Zapata style slow burn. Like, it would have been better if they didn't even think about getting together until like this point in the book. It was slow, but it wasn't slow enough in my opinion. I did like it, and I did believe the love. And when it comes to taboo romances and age gaps and stuff like that, when it comes to forbidden romances, I think one of the biggest things for me is I need to believe that these 2 characters have to be together, and I did believe it with this one. Anyways, those are all the books that I read in January and February. I will hopefully come back with a March wrap up and not a March and April. I'm not going to promise anything. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like. I'll see you next month. Goodbye.